This segment here, we're talking about bike prep. We're coming into the spring and many of you will be pulling your bikes out. You may have seen the other segment on battery care. Please, whatever you do, if your bike has not been on a battery tender, please do not go out and push your starter button. Bring your battery up to above 12 volts before you hit that starter button. What's going on is this: motorcycle batteries are not deep cycle batteries. So if they drop below approximately 40%, what'll happen is the plates will fuse together and you've destroyed a cell. Once you destroy the cell, the battery won't hold the charge. If you're like I used to be, and many riders, you walk out there, the bike's been sitting a month or two, and you're hoping it'll start. You push the starter button, it starts, and you're joyous, and you go riding. Well, let's say the battery's at 60%. You hit the starter button, it drops to 50, maybe 48%. Using the 40% benchmark, you're still maybe okay, right? But you only ride the bike 5 minutes to your buddy's house, you turn it off, and then you start it up again. That second start is gonna hit the battery hard enough to take you under 40%. Plates fuse, the cell is destroyed, the battery doesn't work. Now you've ridden the bike for an hour, and you turn it off and it won't start. What happened? The battery won't hold the charge. It won't hold the charge because that cell is destroyed. And you're wondering, why did it work before? Now it doesn't work now. That's it. Most people who've been riding any amount of years have probably had that experience or something similar where they've gone through a battery in a year. Batteries should last 5 years. When I had my fleet, batteries always lasted longer than I had the bikes. And it's because I put them on a battery tender at least once a month. If the bikes were not being used, they were on a battery tender once a month. I didn't leave them on there. You don't necessarily have to leave it on there as long as you're not starting it up all the time. The point is, before you start it, make sure it's up to speed. So battery care. The second thing I want you to think about is taking a look at your bike. Because I had the fleet and I was always managing these bikes and maintaining them for customers, 2.5 million miles, hundreds and hundreds of tire changes and oil changes, you kind of start looking at things on motorcycles. You go to bike night and you look at some bikes and you're looking at brake pads that are worn pretty bad, especially the rears. So, we have a lot of twisties. Nothing wrong with it. People like to drag their rear brake, little comfort braking. It's a nice way to slow the bike down and not have the front suspension diving too much. But the result is you wear out the rear. All you have to do is take a look at your motorcycle from the rear or the front and look at the brake pad material. If the brake pad material is less than the width of the backing plate, get some new pads. Sure, you probably have another couple of thousand miles, maybe, depending on how you ride. If you're on the highway, you could ride all day long if you never put the brakes on. But if you're in an urban environment and you're commuting, stop and go, you're going to go through it pretty quick. But here's the thing: the thinner the brake material, the less heat is dissipated. And that brake pad material, as it gets thinner and holds more heat, it actually goes away faster. You can almost think of it like it's melting away faster because it's hotter. So change your pads. They're not that expensive. I like EBC. I've used EBC on all my fleet bikes and I've had no problems. If you're going to the track, then you should get some racing pads because of the higher heat temperatures and the environment. They're not expensive, especially not compared to the alternative if your brakes go out on you. So that's brake pads. Battery care. Don't start your bike until you put it on a battery tender if it's been sitting for more than about 30 days, especially in the cold weather. And then the last one I'll talk to you about is your chain. Now, some people don't really think about when to replace the chain. And by the way, if you lube it every 800 or so miles, that's only one part of it. It might be 25% of chain care. 75% of chain care is cleaning it. I actually did a test. I had two multi-strata 950s, and one of them I just lubed the chain, and the other one I clean and lubed. The one that I clean and lube, I got over 20,000 miles out of that chain. The other one, I was replacing at 12,000 miles. Now, replacing a chain at 12,000 or 25,000, it's not that big a deal if you do the work yourself. The way you can check out the chain, there's a couple of ways. One, if you see it kinking, it should have been changed a long time ago. The easiest way is to walk up to your bike and at the rear sprocket, in the middle somewhere, the rear sprocket where the chain goes around, grab one of the links at the rivet and just pull it. It should not come up at all. It might come up a 16th of an inch, which would be acceptable for me. 32nd of an inch is fine. It doesn't really matter how tight the chain is because you have teeth between where you're pulling it and where the chain is tightened. If the chain comes up, what it's telling you is those links are stretched or the rivets or the posts are worn, or a combination of both. If you can pull that link up, you should replace your chain. If you wait, sure, you run the risk of breaking a chain, and that has happened to some people on the track. I think the bigger issue for me on the street with a worn chain is the bike vibrates. It's not smooth, it's rough, and it's even at the point where it's not enjoyable to ride. And there's too many bikes sitting in garages because they weren't enjoyable to ride. So keep your bike maintained. Remember, these are performance instruments. It's not like your car where you just jump in and drive forever until 40,000 miles and you take it into the shop. The last thing is your brake fluid. Your brake fluid should be a nice yellowish, maybe slightly gold, but it should be translucent. If your brake fluid is dark brown, you need to replace it. Again, it's a performance vehicle and you need your brakes. Just have them flushed. If you got some riding buddies, you guys should get a compressor, brake flush kit, and you can literally flush your brakes pretty easily. Just get a bottle of DOT4 brake fluid, and it's a fairly easy job to do. If you don't have that system, take it in, it's worth it.